All right, what's up, BDE? Going to just give a warning here that this is probably going to be the worst episode of BDE in all existence.
This shit's so much easier when Mark's here.
We
really miss Mark.
We're very
whatever.
We're very dependent on Mark to come up with a run of show to see, hey, what happened? What happened the last week in energy news? And when Mark's not here, Chuck and I are just, our life's in shambles. And so,
well, we were like going, okay, what happened over the last week? Well, number one, Thomas Rhett got on stage with Rob Thomas of Matchbox 20 and sang "It's 3 a.m. in the morning."
And why are you pissed about it?
Because I set that up,
and you weren't told about it.
I actually don't think the Thomas Rhett entourage will be mad, so I'll go ahead and tell the story. But Stacy Glenn, who went to rival high school with me and is about my age, a couple of years younger than me, but we never knew each other. We met at the Whammies party, and the Whammy is Danny Harrison, so that's George Harrison's son. Every year during the Grammys, he rents out a bar, and he gets all his music friends to come together. They choose one band, and they just play covers all night, and they don't rehearse. So it's just, and Stacy is a longtime drummer. He was Letters to Cleo, Veruca Salt, played drums. He then had his band. You might remember American Hi-Fi. They had that one song, Flavor of the Week.
I don't.
Just anyway, he's now Miley Cyrus's drummer and her musical director. But when Matchbox 20 tours, he's the touring drummer.
Okay.
Because the guy that plays guitar while touring actually plays the drums on the record. So he's just the touring drummer. Anyway, he was there. We met that night. Anyway, great dude. We're talking about being from Fort Bend County. So we become friends, you know, we're texting and stuff. So anyway, I'm watching Thomas Rhett and I text Stacy and I go, man, we need to get TR texting or on stage with your boy Rob, make it happen. And Stacy's like, all right, I got this. And it happened last week. And Thomas Rhett sent out this great quote about, or great Twitter thread about it. Yeah, and all this. And I'm like, I didn't get credit.
Like, that was my idea.
I made it happen.
Well,
but
hopefully you get justice. You're vindicated for setting up this.
You know what I will say.
Music.
I will say every single person involved in that situation. So Stacy Jones and Thomas Rhett, all Thomas Rhett's management team stuff, all best people on the planet. So actually really happy for them, and I'm cool they did it.
I'm always impressed with how much information you index in the music industry, like knowing, oh, you know, they're manager of Miley Cyrus. And I'm like, how do you remember all of this stuff?
Well, you know, this is funny because I've played fantasy football with the same guys since I graduated from Rice. So that was, 30 some odd years ago. Right. And we've been playing it, and I used to just crush it. I would win the league every other year. I was great. And then, kind of the last 15 years or so, I haven't been as good. And I was going, well, it's because I got kids. And I used to always be like, I would call the newspaper writer for the local newspaper that covered the team. So I was all buddies with all these sports writers everywhere, and I'd get inside scoop. This is all pre-internet and stuff. And so I was telling my buddy Fish, I'm going, yeah, it's just, it's all kind of changed. He goes, let's cut to the chase, Chuck. If we were playing blonde country music singer, you'd win every year. I think your focus has just changed.
You just don't. Yeah. You don't have the incentive or the motivation. So
what did happen this week? That's my, that and us going to New York. We can tease this because we recorded.
We'll talk about that a little bit, but in energy news, it seemed kind of like a slow week. So especially coming off of last week's BDE, because we were expecting a lot of action. Markets were in turmoil, and seems like actually maybe they weren't.
It was a yawner.
Yeah, and so
and we shouldn't say that because bombs have gone off in the Middle East, but not the all-out assault that potentially we were expecting.
So, anyways, kind of slow on the energy front, but I think he had some OPEC news.
So OPEC actually came out. So for the first time since July of 2023, they actually cut their estimates for future oil growth. So they were predicting 2024 to be up 2.25 million barrels a day of demand. They're cutting that back to 2.11 million barrels a day of demand, which is still a huge growth in demand.
Yeah.
I mean, my whole career, it feels like it's up 1 million barrels, a day. And they also cut back 2025. So 1.85 million barrels down to 1.78 million barrels. So a little bit of a cut. And that's all kind of on softening in China demand.
Yeah.
So,
it's very unfortunate that we don't have Mark here today to talk about the second and third order effects of what that means for the market. But I want to read this tweet real quick that just popped up in my feed as I'm sitting here. Sam Bradley said, "You know what I don't miss? A tweet from Trump when oil would get over $70 a barrel and it would promptly fall like $6 a barrel." I think like a lot of people forget about that. It's like when Trump was in office, like anytime oil prices would go up, he'd just start tweet storming.
He'd just badger him. He'd beat him into submission.
Trump was like single-handedly OPEC Junior, but just with his Twitter. So that's funny, but we'll get Mark next week. Or when's Mark back? Is he back next week?
Yeah, he's back next week. Kirk, who knows? Who knows about Kirk?
I haven't talked to Kirk. I don't even. Is Kirk alive? I haven't talked to him. I don't know what Kirk's up to in the world, but you and I were up in New York.
Yeah,
this weekend. Really good time. Tell them about what we were doing.
So we went up. We actually recorded a good 2 hours with Jonathan. He was pissed that I called him John Farber. He's Jonathan Farber with an A, Than. No, but anyway, he sat down with us in 2 hours. We talked about kind of everything. I mean, we talked about the Crown Rock deal, private equity, state of private equity today.
Oxy acquires Crown Rock, $12 billion. Lime Rock backed Crown Rock. We got too many rocks here.
A lot of rocks.
Yeah, a lot of rocks. Just hell of a story there. Made a just unbelievable return on their investment.
And the cool thing about it that we talk about a lot, and hopefully this will get to stay in the podcast, just compliance. It's always difficult to what you can talk about, but they own that asset for 17 years.
Yeah.
So typical private equity is, 3 to 5, and back in the heyday it was like 2 to 4.
Yeah.
You bought something, drilled 2 wells, and flipped it.
Talked about the conviction that they had in that asset and the team, and so that podcast was super good. What I loved about it was with you and I on there. Like you've known Farber way longer than I have, and you know him way better. And so you already know a lot of his story, right? But I didn't know anything about him, and so getting both kind of his outlook on oil and gas today, private equity markets, but then getting to roll that back into his backstory. Like, he started his first fund when he was 30 years old, $100 million fund. I thought that was fucking impressive. And so just getting to hear how he came up. And then there's also a lot of Houston energy finance history in there too. Kind of talking about some of the density of people that were at Goldman back in the 90s that are, the Maynard Holtz and the Bobby Tudors up today.
Eric Mullins, who's now at Lime Rock Resources with him.
It's cool just to get to unpack all of that. And hear about
people have always talked about, oil and gas startups, and then Chuck Yates needs a job. And I've always said that what you and Jake do such a great job at is an entrepreneur and getting them to tell their story.
Yeah.
And it was cool watching you do that with Farber, because that's what you were doing. It's like, hey, time out, level set me back here.
Yeah, no, for sure.
How did it all start?
I thought it was a unique conversation because of all those different elements bringing it together. So yeah, I'm excited for that to drop because I just think that there's so much insight on it. But yeah, there's also a story that we didn't get to talk about on the podcast where Farber was telling us over dinner where, they lost ton of money taking a big bet on this asset, and that same fund is the one that rolled over to this Crown Rock. And so I'm hoping that we can get Farber back on to tell that story, because that was like, when he was telling it, that was kind of like a roller coaster of emotions. So just all around great storytelling. And he took us out. Amazing dinner. I want to give him a shout out. I sent him a text yesterday, told him thanks for that dinner, because that was amazing dinner. I think I ate more seafood Thursday night than I have cumulatively in the rest of my life.
So
and it was amazing.
I was not food porn dude like I normally am. So I wasn't taking pictures of everyone.
Yeah.
But the green bell pepper, gazpacho.
Yeah, drinking it out of
celery straw. I got a picture of that, so I'll send that to Jacob.
Well, I told
everybody needs to see that.
I've got a video of the mussels that were cooked in the pig's stomach.
We can throw that in since we have nothing to talk about.
I was laughing
week.
because like that restaurant was way more bougie than what I am. You know, I'm like a barbecue, hamburger, steak type of dude. And I was laughing because every dish that they brought out at that restaurant, they had to give us instructions on how to eat it. And like, I needed the instructions. Like,
everybody did.
They set it out in front of me. I'm like, I have no idea how to eat this. But actually one of my friends who's in New York and is like a New York foodie. When I posted that Instagram story of the mussels in the stomach, she replied, she's like, oh my gosh, where is that? And so like just top tier.
Out in Brooklyn.
So yeah, instead of staying on top of energy news, me and Chuck were just getting to eat some of the best food in New York. And
I tweeted out the wine we were drinking. We crushed the wine that night.
Yeah, we did.
I mean,
that was the Friday night wine flex.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's see.
What else do we have in energy? So energy prices are up $5 all over the last week. All we had to do was get online last week and say, you know, all hell's breaking loose. But they've bounced back a little bit.
Yeah. Man, there's really not a ton that I've seen in the energy space. There is this one, we'll talk about this Twitter thread that I read because I found it interesting. And it's this guy he's an indie hacker. And so what that means is he's a software developer and he has several, like he just builds, different small software companies and sees which ones stick. So he has like 6 of them now that have been able to commercialize, and he travels the world. And he posted this chart. I'll send this chart to Jacob so y'all can see it on video, but the chart is GDP per capita versus temperature. His whole point that he's talking about is how air conditioning leads to productivity. And what he said was, he's like, in Bali, me and my friends would go all into an idle state without realizing it. You just sit in cafes and restaurants. Most don't have AC there and you do nothing. You're just hanging around. Then when you enter into a cafe that does have AC, after a half an hour, you'd wake up from the standby mode. You have ideas again and your ambition's back. You wouldn't even realize that you get into this idle slow state, but your brain goes on power save mode with the heat and you can't even think. And so his entire point is that, really the air conditioning leads to higher productivity in humans. And this chart that he posted shows the correlation between temperatures and GDP. And so this is obviously an energy conversation, right? And shows the importance of air conditioning. And like you look at it right now, like you see these headlines over in Europe where it's like heat wave devastates Europe and, you know, it's like 80 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that. And like we laugh about it. But then when you think about it, it's like they don't have air conditioning and they're sitting in these, you know, musty houses with, you know, not great airflow. And, you know, Europe's already pretty nonchalant when it comes to work ethic. I don't want Laura to be listening to this.
Yeah, I was about to say, man, I ain't got no piece of this. You out there on your own.
But then you put on hot temperatures on top of it. And I mean, this is just biological reaction that that your brain goes into power saving mode. And so I thought that was interesting to see that this guy that really doesn't talk about energy, he's just a software developer that makes software products, talking about this correlation between AC and GDP.
Yeah, and what's interesting is you take it to the next step of maybe that explains why GDP growth and energy usage are so entwined.
Yeah.
You know, because you're one, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, anytime you're using energy, you're offloading physical labor to a machine that can do multiples of the labor that you can. So that's industrialization growth, but air conditioning playing a big part of it.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's humans that come up with the ideas and businesses, right? And energy's always fueled the industrial side of it. And so I think at times we forget to think that humans are really machines ourselves, right? And we have energy consumption. And so when your body's hot, you have different second, third order effects from that. So I'm just like scrolling through here on Twitter, like finding interesting things that I shared.
I'm going to Grok right now. What happened in energy in the past week? Colin and I are struggling.
We're sitting here.
Yes,
Chuck and I are literally sitting here freestyling a podcast right now. Mark would be so disappointed.
Mark's
Argentina's president, Javier. Do you know how you pronounce his last name?
No, I always mispronounce it. That's why I wasn't going to say anything.
President of Argentina, Javier Milei.
But a picture of him circulating on the driller's console of a neighbor's drilling rig. I thought this was badass. I retweeted it and said, what did I say? Oh, I said, this dude is drilling oil wells. What an absolute stud. Easy 300 likes there. Take that. Hit those singles all day. But I was thinking about this a little bit deeper because this guy's here, sitting here in the doghouse with a neighbor's crew behind him, and he's got coveralls on, got safety glasses, sitting in the driller's chair, working the joystick. They're clearly showing him how to work this rig. And, you know, I think we made a comment about this last week on BDE, where it was like any politician that's like Harris, that's anti-fracking, ban fracking, like just ask them a simple question of like, okay, yeah, we ban fracking. What is fracking? Right. Like, do you understand what fracking is? Can you imagine if like Joe Biden or Harris or Trump, anyone, it's like, hey, I'm going to go throw on some coveralls and I'm going to go hang out on a day with a rig and I want to learn about it. Like, I want to learn about what it actually takes to produce oil and gas, what it takes to produce energy for the world. Like, this is why this guy is so loved and has such a deep following, and because he's a leader, and he's like, I'm going to get out here and just see how these things work. Could you ever imagine an American president doing that in modern times?
No,
like zero chance. There are people, like I saw Zuckerberg like 5 or 6 years ago. Him and his wife went and toured a deep water drill ship. I thought that was cool. As fuck. But like politicians, like it's just they don't care to be out there with the people and like learning about what it's like.
It's hot and it is nasty and it's the middle of nowhere. But you really should, given the significance of energy in the world, the fact we fight wars over it and all, you should have more than a bullet point understanding.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then make bold claims that we should ban it.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make sense. So.
Yeah, because that's going to be really interesting. The Vaquero, is it the Vaquero Basin that's down in Argentina? Because I've heard it's as big as the Permian. It's just got more pressure. Dude, we may just have to delete this podcast. we're a bunch of
people are listening.
Vaca Muerta.
Oh yeah,
the Vaca Muerta.
Hold on,
but supposedly it's the Permian, but it's got way more pressure.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to look at where the U.S.
Ted Cross at Novi Labs is just like got his head in his hands going, oh my God. I talked all about this basin to you, Chuck, and you can't even remember.
We should get Ted on sometime.
I had Ted on
BDE.
Oh yeah. No, he'd be great. I've kind of given him standing offer anytime he wants to come back on Chuck job. Cause he's so smart.
Yeah, he is.
And really thoughtful.
We should definitely pull him in on like analyzing some of these M&A deals or
get Zach Copland to come on and do a live analysis of them.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, dude, I think that we should probably just end this thing because it's fucking painful.
We still think the presidential candidate Kamala Harris should sit down with an interview. Happy to have her here, but we'd like to know why she is no longer for a ban on fracking. Because, I mean, we've got video of her 2019. We need to ban fracking, offshore drilling, all that. The campaign has put out a statement saying they're not for banning fracking. We'd just like to know why. I mean, I'm willing,
get some clarity on where they stand on that. So, yeah, if they're listening, open invite to come on the show. So, all right, guys. Well, I appreciate y'all sitting
Humoring
through
with
that
us.
very painful show. You probably walked away from this and you're like, damn, I did not learn a single thing today about energy news. So apologize, but look out for the Lime Rock, Jonathan Farber podcast. It'll be dropping on Chuck Yates Needs a Job. Highly recommend listening to it. It'll be dropping sometime, maybe next week.
Yeah. Got
to go through legal and compliance, but highly recommended. I think that it was a super entertaining conversation. And then we'll be back next week. Kurt Coburn will be back on. We just got official text from him that he's going to be back. Is Mark back next week?
I think Mark's back too.
Okay, so we might actually have a show next week.
We might have a show next week.
All right, we'll catch y'all next week.